Okay. So today on the agenda, I will put it up in a few seconds. You'll notice that it's kind of been all over the place. It's like, what is due? Who knows? And that's kind of like the nature of changing mid-course. So because I saw the opportunity to get folks to do the GRFP, I sort of encouraged them to do that, to focus all their attentions there. That was due last Friday. So now that's gone. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of go back to this idea of rubric construction in the context of what was important for that. And then we will do, we'll sort of use those ideas to improve our personal statements for folks going to grad school, or to improve our research statements for those who are interested in applying for jobs, or improve our CVs, right, for that same type of thing. And that would be just today's activity. And then we're sort of going to be looking forward to where we're headed, which will be the two next things that you'll produce for this class. One, you're going to be taking observations. So that's already happening, hopefully. And then you're going to be analyzing those observations. So at some point, you'll need to do that analysis. And then you'll need to write up that analysis. Oh, no. Okay. So that's really frustrating or scary, right? So those three things are all your observational projects. So that will be one portion of your grade. And the other portion of your grade will be that self-selected research topic that you want to write about. And you will basically write an abstract and an introduction. Since you will do no novel research on that topic, I will not expect you to have methods, data, conclusions. I'm just asking you to find something that you're interested in, do the background research to write a good introduction. And when we say good introduction, we're going to use the idea of the rubrics that we're constructing today, right? We're going to build another version of it later on in the semester, and we'll use that to analyze our own writing. So by the end of this semester, we'll have two major things that you'll turn in, one of which is a Python notebook that has your data and the analysis thereof. Okay? Do not print that. I need to be able to run it. So you'll pass it to me, I'll debug it. You'll pass it to me, I'll debug it. You'll pass it to me, I'll debug it. That's your data. Completely separately, we will have something written. And that will also go through iterations, right? If I see the very first draft of your final research project, or, the thing that you did research on, not new research, but literature research, if I see that final draft in the last week of class, then you've missed an opportunity to get feedback and improve it. Ideally, in the last week of class, you'll bring everything that you worked on, and you'll have updated and made the writing good. Okay? So I can write a list of all the things that I'm expecting, which papers that we've looked at, which papers you will have looked at. By the end of the semester, I'll expect you to have read on your own between 4 and 6 review papers or articles that are relevant to your topic. Now, for some people, those research articles will be 3 or 4 pages. So that is not equivalent to a 20-page review, right? So if you read that 20-page review and you get some really great information out of it, that might be worth 2 or 3 separate articles. Does that make sense? But it's a back and forth conversation. And meanwhile, you're summarizing them, you're learning about them. But the thing that I really want you to be focusing on is learning how to match the tone in these scientific writings. So you may notice in some of the feedback that I'm giving you that I'm asking you to do things like look at your topic sentences. Look at whether or not your paragraphs support them. Are they too long? Are they too short? If you have a paragraph that's 1 sentence, that's usually a problem, because that means that it's not really what we think of as a scientific paragraph. You would never have that in a paper. Just like as you read your papers, you tend not to see an entire page of text, right? And similarly, maybe it is a really long paragraph, 8 or 9 sentences. Do all of those sentences support that first topic sentence? And if not, it's not well constructed, right? We're going to talk about things like how we do citations. So you may see some feedback on there about citing with the lead author et al. And then the date, right? As opposed to like the author and his buddies, or, Bob and his friends. We want to make sure that it's not conversational. That's one of the things that we talked about when we talked about rubric construction. So we are going to use the rubric that we already created, which talks about, being concise, using good topic sentences. But we're also going to add today the rubric that we're going to construct from Alex Lang's website. Okay. And then we'll analyze the personal statements from one another. Do we have those dated? Whatever they just submitted. Okay. You have it all printed up. Okay. And then we'll get the feedback on that. And next week, you'll turn in those statements to me, and I'll give you feedback on them. And then starting next week as well, you'll start turning in new research papers to me with your summaries. So next week will be all of the final versions of whether you're doing a personal statement, a research statement, a CV, whatever the final version of that you want to be, to me, for it to be looked at for the first time, and then whatever the new research paper you're looking at is. Okay. Okay. So now let me go to any questions or comments before we go forward? Uh-oh, how do I do this? Oh boy. All right. So I'll try and update this a little bit more, just to say, like final draft of each of these two. And we're not going to review a grant. We're going to review one another's objects. So that's what this will be. And eventually we will review a grant. We'll use the same type of rubric that we're talking about today, but we'll do it for a much smaller one, something like 6 pages. Is almost everyone in here? Well, so we've already talked about your research project. So everyone else here is doing observational. So you will notice that there are these strange things happening now throughout the year. They're called clouds. So you want to be cognizant of them. So if we want to do observing tonight, that's perfectly okay with me, but have a look at the weather for the rest of the week. So nominally tomorrow we have a day in which we're already going to be going up. That is to say, I'll be going up to the observatory to allow a class to be up there. So if you want to do observations tomorrow, that's perfectly okay with me. But if you look at today and you say, well, the weather's good today, but it's not good tomorrow, you may make that decision differently, right? Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. So let me share this here. Okay, and then to remind folk, we had this rubric. Oh God, that's not what I wanted. All right. So we saw that beforehand, right? You remember how that was made? It's by measuring which things we thought were the most important and which things we thought were maybe not as important, but still good to have. Grammar, no good. Yeah. Well spelled. Okay. Okay. So as you go through your own work, you want to apply the same thing to every single piece that you're turning in. Right? That includes stuff that you've gotten back. And maybe I haven't added all of my comments and questions, but you look through and you're reading it out loud to yourself because you now realize the importance of saying some of the sentences out loud to catch typos. And you might say, oh, that's not well spelled, right? And you'll see that as you read it out. Okay. Okay. Comments, questions, concerns? No one has any energy. I understand. I feel the same way. You have lots of energy? Can I have some? I need energy. Okay, so here's the graduate fellowship research. Let's zoom in a little bit so everyone can see it. We talked about it in detail, tips for getting started. But here's the major things that I wanted to focus on. The idea of review criteria. So in every solicitation, whether this is for a job, whether this is for graduate school, they will ask you something, right? So they will say, that's what it says exactly. Let's open it up. Here's the solicitation. Okay. All right. All right. So it recognizes and supports graduate students for pursuing full-time research and doctoral degrees in science, STEM, blah, 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 3 years of support, who have demonstrated their potential for significant research achievements in STEM or STEM education, encourages submission of applications from the full spectrum of diverse talent in STEM. So let's say you only had those 2 sentences. What would you think is important? These last 2 sentences. Provides 3 years of support over a 5-year fellowship period for the graduate education of individuals who demonstrated their potential for significant research and achievements in STEM. They actively encourage submission of applications to the full spectrum of diverse talent in STEM. What is important at all? What is important to the people asking for the synopsis of this program, right? So this is put out by the National Science Foundation. And this is the synopsis of the program, telling you about the opportunity to get $30,000 or $40,000 a year for 3 years. So they are saying here what the importance of the program is. And now you've read these last 2 sentences. What sticks out to you? Demonstrating potential for what?
That you can either do research or education.
Yeah, perfect, right? So this is the first thing. You need to demonstrate potential. So if I were to build a rubric for this, I would say, okay, so is that properly demonstrated? Right? Anything else? Diversity, what does that mean? That's that word, diverse, but I don't see the word diversity. Diverse talent, and maybe we interpret that as diversity. And we have to ask ourselves, what does diversity mean? Right, different backgrounds, different knowledge. Sure, that could be diversity in fields. There's also diversity in people. There's diversity in genders. There's diversity in sexual orientations. There's diversity in socioeconomic backgrounds, right? All of these things give us different opportunities to experience the world, right? Okay. So, I mean, this is the synopsis of the program. If I keep going down, okay, it has the funding amount. It has who is eligible, like where they're physically eligible to get it. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You can't have applied while enrolled in a graduate degree. The number of times you can apply, the application process, due dates, Okay, here's your physics and astronomy due date, October 20th. Okay. What's that? Yeah, this isn't the best. We're assuming that everyone who wanted to apply has applied. But now we're going to do an analysis of what they should have done. Does that make sense? It's not going to help them, right? It's already submitted. Okay. But I want you to look at the fact that we just went through this whole thing. Okay. Here's the program award information. It can be transferred. Here's who's eligible. Okay. Degree requirements, undergraduate requirements, field of study. So you'll see that this is a lot of like legalese. Is generally speaking quite broadly to, how they don't get sued. So they have to be very specific with what they're asking for. And you might read this whole thing and be completely unprepared to apply, right? Because this talks about reference letters, about time that it's submitted, but doesn't really tell you very much about what they're looking for. So something like this, both statements must address this review described in detail 7. Okay, 3 pages. The maximum length is 2 pages. This includes references, citations. Okay. It has to certify that it's its own work. It doesn't say what's supposed to be in it yet. Okay. So let's go to this section 6. All right. The 2 merit review criteria are listed below. Okay. Intellectual merit encompasses the potential to advance knowledge. Is that helpful? Super useful, right? And broader impacts. The potential to benefit society and contribute to the advancement of specific desired societal outcomes, right? And so, they have some examples here, some questions. So you start looking at this and you might think to yourself, man, how do I go from these very broad questions to how I would actually apply this to the work that I'm doing? Let's imagine for a moment that we're not looking at this, but we're applying to grad school. Or we're not looking at this, but we're applying to a job interview. And they say something along the lines of, the applicant needs to show the potential for work in such and such a field with this type of machinery, right? How do you then go and extrapolate from there? How do you know what to write about? Right. So you're looking for some good intersection here, right? So you're already starting with a list of your own attributes that hopefully we've created. And what we want to do is we want to try to, as much as possible, directly address whatever statement is in the call. Okay. So you don't have to repeat what's in the call, right, word for word, but you want to have something that directly addresses anything that they ask for. So if they ask you to demonstrate any experience you have with research, and you say, my experience with research starts with blah, 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 right? Now, you don't say those words exactly, but you get what I'm saying. And so what you're saying, right, is like there is some intersection between who you are and what the call you're going for is. Okay. Generally speaking, the words that they choose in any application process are very specific. Do not ignore a sentence, right? So if they say something like, preference will be given to those who do outreach. Don't just look at that and say, well, I don't do outreach, so therefore I won't address it. Address it, right? Say, listen, I've never done outreach before, but this is mostly because of my background and a lack of time. If I had the opportunity, I would do X, Y, Z, right? So every sentence in here matters. Okay. Is that fair? So essentially, if you work through this process, you'll get to Alex Lang's website. Okay. And here's the review criteria. Okay. That is mostly lifted out of there, but consolidated and written in a format that I think is much easier. And we basically want to look at these 5 criteria, right? 5 elements for both criteria. And the major question that we're going to have today when we sit down and we start to look at one another's work is to just say, how well did you state your ability to advance knowledge? Or how well did you state your ability to benefit society? Right? And feel free to elaborate on it. Have a conversation with the person in the text. You know, this didn't really come through here, even though you mentioned, you know, the drug epidemic in your community. You didn't really mention how you could possibly solve that. Right? So there's a difference between maybe identifying a problem versus explaining what you could do to lessen that problem. Right? Okay. That's fair. Okay, do we want to build a rubric off this? Do we want to go to sleep? How many people don't want to do it? It's about half the class. That's not bad. How many people want to do it? Okay. Okay. You don't have to do it. You just did all of this work on your own work. I think doing these rubrics will be really important for when we are analyzing our own work later. But maybe you just spent way too long looking at your personal statements and you've been writing so much and you're like, wow, this semester never seems to fucking end. So maybe we give ourselves a little like leeway, a little credit, right? Do you have your personal statements, your research statements now? Would you prefer, raise your hand if you would prefer peer review today, or would you prefer to turn them in? So raise them if you'd prefer peer review today. Okay, good. All right, so that's enough people that we can do one more round of peer review. Okay, and I just want to do them with respect to these. You're not looking in there for topic sentences. You're not looking in there for spelling and grammar. You're trying to address, did they do these things well? And to what level could it have been better? Does that make sense? Okay. So go ahead and grab whatever statement you want to start with. We're not going to build a rubric. We're just going to assess them fresh off of here. And I'll force you to do rubrics later in the class when we have more energy. Okay. That won't happen. Maybe I'll bring coffee next time. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So for your cover letter, you know, you're still pitching yourself in a certain way. Just make sure that you have that conversation, whoever you're going to pass it to, left or right. Just, you know, have that conversation about what your goals were, because they won't be the same as everyone else's. I don't know. Which way do we want to go? Anyone have a coin? Flip a coin. Flip a protractor. Don't have a coin. All right.
Flip a shoe.
All right, heads or tails? Heads. All right, heads is left, tails is right. Okay. So we're passing to your right. You.
We're doing space.
Yeah, we're gonna make a circle. Go ahead and make a big circle.
The one that goes this way, I'm going this way. Circle.
It's to the right. Yeah, to the right. Yeah, you pass to your right. I know, we did left and right, so we've done both. So now I focus on left there.
Well, it's 12 points.
Or maybe randomly select someone else. Right? Because that way you get a different person's opinion. Instead of only hearing from reading about I don't know. It's a thought. Yeah, so it's yeah, hand it to someone else. If they've already read it, and you pass it to someone else.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't read someone's, you know, look for them specifically, maybe okay, we'll spend like 15-20 minutes looking over these, and then we'll look at some feedback that we can give one another. All right, I'm gonna throw you two in a breakout room,
Oh, thank you.
and I'll try and close the breakout room this time so that I don't accidentally miss you.
We appreciate it.
Okay, that should be open now. Resume recording. So what'd you think? I mean, you may have seen these a couple different times. They were probably reviewed by other people. Thumbs. Yeah, like generally speaking, was it like easier to review? Was it easier to review these statements than it was 2 or 3 weeks ago? You felt like there was good progress? Yes, no, yeah, kind of. Okay. Yes. Medium. Okay. Do you think folks stuck to these? Think they did a good job here? Okay, all right, that's fine. Without being too specific, you've seen a couple of these now. You see it in your own work. You can talk about your own work. Is there anything that jumps off of the page that you're saying, well, if folks just did X, Y, Z, I think it would be stronger. I'm about to see all of your, at the start of next Tuesday's class, get them all back and I'll read them. But I want you to be a little metacognitive about this, thinking about what you're thinking about, right? Be like, look, I didn't know how to do it. I knew that I had to do this, but I just didn't do a good job, right? Can you help? Something like that, right?
I think, find those personal statements, it's like, talk more about personal life or professional life and what's gonna make people want to hire you more.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Okay. I mean, there isn't one right answer about this, right? But generally speaking, the reason why we talk about our person at all and why we consider this important is a little bit with respect to what we talked about when we saw the NSF call. Why do they give a shit about diversity? What does that mean, right? Why would anyone care about this? This is a really, really important question. And yet sometimes we kind of gloss over it. And we say, well, that's just expected. No, there's a real reason why we care about it. Sure, different opinions. So some people will use different opinions and they will say, well, that different opinions will make the company more money or it'll make science better. Okay, that's one way to view it. There's also a better reason. It's the right thing to do. What is your sense of ethics? What is your sense of responsibility to your community? Okay. So you could say, well, I'm going to be a capitalist. I'm going to extract as much capital from the world as I can. So I want the most efficient scientist. So therefore I need the highest diversity of scientists. That's possible, but NSF doesn't care about that. NSF cares about making the world a better place, a more equitable place, one that has better ethics, one that has better morals, right? That's built into the conversation. So when we're talking about ourselves in a personal statement, and we're thinking about it professionally, we want to think about it in these two lenses. Maybe you're pitching yourself to a Fortune 500 company, and you should be a little specific. You say, I'm going to make you a shit ton of money. That's why you should pay me a shit ton, right? That's great. You want to know your audience in that respect. But if you're proposing to grad school, that's certainly not what you're going to say. Your background does not make you the best scientist in the world, but it might make you a really great person to talk to. It might tell you a lot more about how you've overcome things and the fact that if they give you a spot at grad school, you won't just bounce the first time it gets inconvenient, right? So there's other reasons to think about our personal life as it reflects to these larger themes. You know, when they ask questions about why did you, or, tell us something about you overcoming such and such. Why are they asking that? Yeah, why would they want you not to give up? Because what? Sure, but I mean, think about for a company, right? Why does that matter for a company? It's not a waste of money. It's a significant cost to train someone. It's a significant cost to allow a grad student in for them to leave 6 months in. They don't want to fail you, and they don't want at your company for you to fail out, right? Onboarding someone takes a lot of money, time, attention, things like that, right? So what are they asking for? They're asking for resilience, right? That's what they're asking for if you overcame anything. They may be asking about, are you like a good person, right? They don't want you to show up and then, squirrel away all of the office supplies. So they're just leaking dollars from the cost of, one printer and printer ink, and printer ink's like $60 a piece, right? Okay. So does that process make sense? It's not just asking you about your personal life. Oh, I really like snowboarding, and so I'm going to be really great here because I love going fast, right? That doesn't do anything. You want to think about these larger themes that exist in both science and capitalism as a whole. Sure, efficacy is one of them. Are you a more efficient scientist? Can you think outside the box? Sure, but that might be more about how you do problem solving, right? So your ability to keep at a problem while trying different techniques every time, right, makes you a unique scientist, as opposed to just like driving as hard as you can into the problem and hoping that at some point it gives way, right? You see how those are different statements? Okay. Any other themes, thoughts? Okay. One of the largest sets of feedback that I gave was that you're telling the same type of narrative that you did in an abstract. You start really broad, you tighten it up, addressing whatever it is they're asking about, and then you go broad again. And I think you'll find the same thing is true in all of the types of writings, whether you're doing a presentation where you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them, and then you tell them what you told them. That sounds really stupid, but this is how professional speaking and writing gets done. Because if you just say something once and it's not woven into a narrative, it's lost. Think about this whole class. Have you remembered every single word I said? No, of course not. You would never be able to do that. Human brains don't do that. So instead, you want to think about what are the through lines, what are the bylines that are going through the entire story? Because no matter what you're communicating a story. Now, there may be facts involved, there may be figures that you're trying to communicate, but it's all narrative, right? Just scientific narrative. Okay, so when you're thinking about your personal life, you want to weave that in, whether it's a grad student application, whether it's a proposal, whether it's a business application, you want to weave the parts of your personal life that are going to do that middle part here. So here's all the things that happen to you. I'm only going to tell you about the stuff that matters so that I can focus on the ways that I am going to respond to what you're asking for. Okay, you're looking for a person who does X, Y, and Z good. Interestingly enough, I have some funny stories about me doing X, Y, and Z up here, which lead me to be doing really good at them here. And I'm going to make you lots of money or whatever you want to say, right? The process makes sense? Okay. Any other themes that we noticed? Yeah. Yeah, good. That's a great question. So usually that's in the structure part here. So the intellectual merit, right? This is something that we're thinking about in the context of will it advance knowledge? And you kind of have to see that everywhere. The broader impact is certainly the potential to benefit the society and contribute to the advancement of specific outcomes, social outcomes. That'll be near the bottom anyway, right? Those broader outcomes anyway. Here, these sections, they're gonna look like they're right in the middle, because it's a specific topic. And so the potential for the proposed activity to advance the knowledge, that's gonna be described when we talk about that middle part where we found some specific problem that we're gonna try and advance. To what extent do they suggest new, creative, original ideas? That's like in the middle and near the top. You have some new experience that you're gonna share with the world. Is the plan well reasoned, well organized, based on sound rationale? That's in the middle. How well qualified is the individual? That's all the top. Right? That's all of the experience part of the top, talking about who you are before you focus on what you're gonna try to do. Okay? Are there resources available to the PI to carry out the activities? That's in the top and a little bit in the plan. Right? That makes sense. So you kind of see that there's not like this section here responds to this section here. It's like, did the thing as a whole, did I get that story from the person? And sometimes you can see that just by looking at the topic sentences. As you go topic sentence by topic sentence, do you get the whole story from the research or the personal statement? And then does that address these? Because if you're thinking about these in the context of a rubric that we're going to use later, each one of the things in the rubric should be addressed by a topic sentence, right? This, let's say we have some study on airflow. Airflow over foil is important to the broader society because XYZ, topic sentence, a bunch of supporting statements, right? And then we see at the very beginning why this is important. That's necessary in any rubric that we'll have for scientific writing, because we need to be able to justify to the reader why they should start reading. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, I feel like we are getting towards the middle of the semester. Right at the beginning, we have a lot of energy, and then we run out of energy and we're taking exams, we're taking finals. So I think we should stop. Okay, next week, we are going to turn in our personal statements, our research statements, and a summary of the new research paper. And then we're basically not going to keep doing these peer reviews, except for when it comes to analyzing a proposal of mine. So now you get to pick apart work that I've done, right? Great. That's awesome. So the thing that we need to focus on, though, is making sure that you are getting your observations in. Because the longer that it takes for you to observe these things, the longer that it'll take for you to do the data analysis, the longer that it'll take for you to analyze the data analysis. I'm not requiring that you do it tonight, but if you want to, you're welcome to. So let me know. But you will need to let me know whether tomorrow or Saturday is something that you want to do. If you're coming to homecoming, you want to be volunteering, you can kind of do that at the end. I mean, I can't practice. What? No, thank God. It literally just, it's Saturday.